Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Street Dog Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Dynamo. How's it going, dude?
Hello, everyone, and good to see you again.
Hell yeah, dude. We're back with another episode, and this time we're going to be talking about GTA 5, which is why the title of this episode, as I think you suggested earlier, Dynamo, is Grand Theft Gameplay. So it's a good one.
Yeah.
Basically, exactly what the game is. So makes sense. I'm mostly interested in breaking down, initially, obviously, the gameplay-focused stuff of it, but pretty much every aspect of GTA 5, as I've experienced it, has been pretty subpar. I think the most entertaining gameplay loop, and this is something we did cover in the previous episode of this podcast, where we talked about the grand movie game conspiracy, the fact that there's a very heavy filmic focus for a lot of these games. And then we also touched on open world stuff. One thing you brought up in that episode was Just Cause 2 and how essentially the best aspects of the most fun aspects of the game are just like absolute chaos, which obviously is in stark contrast to a more serious tone that they take for the story. So it's a lot of tonal messes. And in GTA 5, that's actually the same thing so far that I've seen. Like, the most fun that I've had is when, you know, my brother and I, or maybe Veek joins or something, like, we're all just, like, running around and getting into, ridiculous antics, basically, that, like, no realistic world would ever show that level of destruction and that level of, like, incompetence on the behalf of the AI. And it's also very lazy as well, where, you know, they essentially will just perpetually spawn in reinforcements. So even when you have like the only fun of the actual game, it's not a proper gameplay loop because it just escalates to 5 stars and then nothing else happens in terms of the escalation. You don't get anything else. It doesn't even seem like they actually throw increasingly difficult enemies at you. It's more about like the quantities as the stars go up. I guess you technically do have the SWAT guys that come in and obviously helicopters at 3 stars, but for me, it feels very different than what I would expect it to be, where, oh, we've got to avoid like these areas or these roads because the police have actually set up, you know, roadblocks, or they're coming in from this angle. And I was almost expecting intuitively a more grand strategy-esque approach to how you get intercepted by the cops or what their actual game plans are. But there's not even really a semblance of any sort of, you know, I guess tactics or some sort of cohesion and cooperation between individual AI people. Half the time they run into themselves or smash into their own cars, or they're jumping around trying not to get run over by one another. There are several times where those guys that are hanging off of the cars that are using like automatic weapons or whatever, the SWAT people, those guys just get like hit by, you know, some sign or some like side of the road and they fall off, and I think they just die instantaneously. Maybe they just get back up and start running it. But like it's very goofy. It's very disconnected from what you would expect. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, well, they're going to have some sort of organized thing, but they're also going to have a sane limit to how many like helicopters they're going to throw at you and how many SWAT vehicles they're going to throw at you. And maybe they do need to call in the National Guard and get the fucking tanks rolling at the like worst case scenario. But that's something that would only happen again, like maybe at 5 stars. Maybe in a hypothetical world, it would be like 10 stars or something crazy. What doesn't really compute for me is they basically took the lazy way out for player progression and made it super easy to get really like powerful in terms of your arsenal that you could carry around. But then they didn't bother giving you a reasonable set of opponents, because if they did make it so that there was a limit on how many helicopters you could send at it, well, you can have players that have like 10 rockets each, and these rockets are heat seeking and stuff. So, and it's super easy to get access to that stuff pretty early on. So then at that point, it actually makes sense to like, it makes sense why they needed to rely on something that was a little bit more gimmicked, because they fucked up the power creep and the power curve, I guess, as players are getting invested. And maybe this is somewhat colored heavily by my co-op play over the single player play, which had similar issues, I thought, but it never really feels like they actually beat you, and it mostly feels like they just gimmicked you or overwhelmed you. And maybe that's more so down to the raw mechanics than the power curve, but it does feel pretty bad in terms of the actual core gameplay, like the iconic element of GTA, which is like, for me anyway, I always associated it with let's blow up all these cops, let's cause a bunch of chaos. And it seems like the older the franchise got, and older the genre got in some respects for other franchises as well, the more they wanted to move away from that and the lazier they got with that. But again, this is my first GTA game, so really a lot of this stuff I've just learned through osmosis, and then I had this preconceived notion coming in. So as somebody yourself, Dynamo, who's obviously played this for a lot longer than I have, did you have any particular thoughts on the breakdown that I had? Did you have any thoughts on like where GTA 5 is actually different from the previous games in regards of just engaging with the police? Or is this kind of like how it had just evolved naturally?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question to answer because, first of all, a lot of the systems that GTA 5 employs are systems that are carried over from the previous games, whereas some other stuff are stuff that actually is new and I would say not very well done. So talking about the wanted level system in particular, it actually started off already in the first game where the maximum amount of stars you could get is 4, and you will only get regular cops. You will not get SWAT team members or anything like that. In GTA 2, which is the game I'm most familiar with, the main thing actually is that you can get up to 6 stars, in which case you actually get the army in the streets, like literally everywhere. Like the soldiers start patrolling the street and they shoot at you with machine guns and they blow you away as soon as they get their hands on you. And generally speaking, you don't want to roam the streets at all if you have that much of a wanted level. And they even set roadblocks up with tanks that snipe you. Well, not snipe you, but they basically take shots at you from tanks. Like, imagine blocking a road with tanks. There's no way you're getting through without a tank of your own, right?
Yes.
But when the series went to 3D, they still had the military, but they no longer patrol the streets. They simply drove tanks which tried to run you over. The tanks never fired again for whatever reason, starting in GTA 3. They just tried to run you over, or if they got close to you, they would exit the tanks and start shooting, which seems like a very dumb strategical decision to make.
That doesn't make any sense.
Like, imagine if you're driving a siege tank and you get out and you start shooting your rifle instead of using the actual tank. Right?
Maybe it becomes like some really messed up logic where there's like, well, we don't want to use these explosive shells like in a civilian district or something. Like, maybe that's the reason. I don't know. That seems really weird. That is very bizarre.
Yeah. But in GTA 4 onwards, they actually removed the military entirely, except for Fort Zancudo in GTA 5, where you can actually fight them. I don't know if you've been there.
Yeah, I have actually engaged with some of those guys, but even there, they just spawn tanks in and Humvees and stuff. Yeah.
Well, spawning things in is unfortunately the standard of these games, which is funny because recently, like last month, I was thinking about a sort of GTA 2 like remake / remaster / reimagining. Not something that I actually want to do, obviously, just a hypothetical what if the game was done better. And I was thinking, since you brought up the grand strategy aspect, one idea I had was the fact that you can hire people, like for money, you can hire them to do whatever you want. So for example, you can hire them to blow up some random cars to distract the cops while you do a robbery, for example. So the cops are going to be focused on them rather than on you. And I was also thinking about the ability of the player being able to destroy or at least damage the buildings used by the police and the military and rival gangs, so that they cannot, at least temporarily, cannot really field units and vehicles from that location. So they'll either have to rely on some faraway place from the other side of the map, or they simply, at least for a while, won't be able to do anything against you until they can get their shit together. Which will be, it will basically create a more dynamic world where all the cops and stuff actually spawn from police stations and, military bases or whatever. Maybe some underground complexes that they have. But you can disable them, at least temporarily. I don't know if you can destroy them for good. Like, that could work, I guess. But the idea
they would have to be able to dynamically rebuild it almost, right?
Exactly. So you can damage them, and they cannot use them until they repair them. So, for example, if you want to do a very high-stake, robbery, for example, you can destroy a police station beforehand, and that will force that police station to be offline for the duration of the robbery, for example. That's an idea I had some weeks ago, which I think is somewhat similar to what you were saying about, like, the police just spawning in.
There's no origin point for them, right? They just appear on any road, basically. Even if it doesn't even make sense, like a mountain road. They just appear here. They drove up the mountain to meet you. It's like ridiculous.
It's also lame how the wanted level works, in that you basically gain wanted level even if you fucking kill a man in the mountain. Somehow the police knows that you did it. And you want to know what's funny? Because I actually have some, information about how the game code works.
Okay.
So basically, you can get wanted level by just destroying and killing people. Like, that's just how the game works. But you can also get wanted level if someone calls the police. Like, they literally get on their phone and call the police. Now, there's a problem. the animals in the game, they can actually call the police. That's actually how they're programmed. Like if you shoot a gun or whatever near animals, they can actually like internally call the police, and you get the wanted level.
Well,
because they forgot to turn it off for the animals. I don't know if they ever fix it, but that's how it was when I played the game.
That's
some
pretty
nice
good.
trivia.
Talk
for
about
you.
the street dog, dude. The fucking street dog's calling the cops on you.
I don't know about the street dogs actually, because the street dogs actually attack you, so maybe they're the only reasonable enemy in the game because they don't endlessly spawn.
Yeah, true. I was okay as an anecdote because you reminded me. I drove all the way from like the actual Liberty City of the area of the map to the like the boonies or whatever the like the desert area is where all of the like trailer trash is basically. I drove all the way up there to do a hunting mission with Cletus as Trevor, the meth guy. And Cletus is just some hick who you can do hunting side missions with. And I was like, all right, let's see what quote unquote content this is. So I drove all the way up there, which was stupid in and of itself. And I start the mission and start walking into the woods. And as he's talking, a cougar or something just runs up and executes me in one hit. And then I respawn in the city. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why did that even happen? And of course, he's just talking the entire time and doesn't even respond to me literally getting killed in a one-hit animation, which I thought was pretty hilarious. So that was the one time I attempted to do that mission. I haven't been back since, because that actually hints at another issue with the game. There are a ton of small problems in addition to the core issues. Like, it actually feels like a disaster the whole way through GTA 5. That you have the issue of you talked about heat level and how it's stupid how it works in terms of how you can actually get it. But there's also zero communication, it feels like, for how long you actually have heat for, where it's so unreadable when it's blinking, because it's the slower the blinking, the closer you are to actually being clear of the heat, instead of there being a straight up timer. Now, the bigger problem with this is you have not only got that issue you have to sort through, you also have to, like, at a glance while you're driving, you look up and you see like the unblinking full white star, because it's so slowly interpolating between blinking and not blinking, that you might think that your heat just refreshed, because that's the lack of animation and the full white stars is signaling that you have active heat and you haven't lost the cops yet. And so when you're actually trying to avoid cops, it's unreadable to know like when you are avoiding them successfully and when you aren't. And that by itself is like insane. Like, I actually can't believe that this game doesn't have like basic stuff like readability in terms of something as important as heat, right? Like, that's one of the core mechanics of the game is how hot you are in terms of the police or whatever. So the fact that is actually unreadable is amazing to me. It's incredible how how little they cared, I guess, because that's just an unforgivable readability issue for me.
I think I may as well go over the history of the wanted level in a bit more detail. I'm going to talk about the earlier GTA games as well as the Saints Row games, because I think they're a very good comparison. So in the first GTA game, you couldn't get rid of it at all unless you went to a garage. In the second game onwards, this is true from the second game all the way to the GTA San Andreas. You can only get rid of the first wanted level. Like, if you have 1 star, it goes away on its own. Otherwise, it never goes away until you respray your car, which is it's not much of a mechanic in GTA 5, although you can do it. But in the previous GTA games, you were basically supposed to go to a respray facility.
Okay.
It's basically a drive-through respray where your car changes color and the cops are suddenly stupid and they don't know that it's actually you with a different color.
Yeah, sure.
And that was the only way to get rid of the wanted level at all in most of the games. In GTA 4, it actually works in a different way, in that it works mostly like in 5, except that the police are looking at you. They're looking for you in specific places, so they don't look all over the map. Like they say the suspect has been seen in this area, so they try to disperse in that area to try and flush you out.
Yeah.
But if you drive away from there, even if you have 5 stars, I think you can get off their heat pretty easily. Unless you take the highway where they have roadblocks or whatever. Like, I think that's much more reasonable.
Run into them, basically. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's much more reasonable than 5, where you basically just have to hide. And one of my favorite anecdotes about 5, well, first of all, it's broken because you can just go into the sewers to get rid of the wanted level because the cops don't spawn there. One of the funny things I remember, I was playing as Franklin in the single player mode. This was when the game was new. And I was basically on 5-star. There were like at least 10 or 20 of those SWAT guys with the rifles looking for me, rappelling down the helicopters and shit. And the stars were blinking very slowly, so my wanted level was about to disappear. And I was hiding behind a fucking pillar next to the entrance of the sewers. And they were all going forward to my location with the rifles pointing at me. And then the wanted level went away, and they all immediately de-aggroed of me. So I just walked off. Like, I'm the guy they were looking for like 10 seconds ago. And they just start walking casually. And I'm like, I use the conversation feature to say, "Oh, what's up? Hey, man." And they just like, we just have a conversation like that because the wanted level disappears.
Yeah, man, what a stupid
That's
system.
a good one. Whereas in Saints Row 1 and 2, whereas the system is mostly the same, a big difference is that it actually tells you exactly how much... it's called notoriety in the game, but it works pretty similarly. It actually shows like a bar that fills, and then you get a star after the bar is completely filled. So on and so forth until you get the full stars. And you can actually see the bar decrease over time.
Yeah,
and that actually helps you determine exactly when the wanted level will go away. So it's much more readable in that game, at least.
I do think that there is a tough design problem at play with the anecdote that you shared about Franklin just being able to walk through the SWATs. That's obviously not the way to solve the problem, but the design problem that I see is, how do we make it so that it's not so restrictive that the player can literally almost never like do anything, basically? How do we make it so that it's not so restrictive that the player is, as soon as they get heat, they're like basically, they have to be incognito for a ridiculously long amount of time, which it already feels like you do have to do that, but maybe part of that is because you can't actually see the meter go down in real time. You just have this stupid blinking thing. I'm sure that's part of it, and that will lead you to... maybe do the make the wrong move at the wrong time and then fuck everything up. But the other component, I think, is a solution to the issue, at least in my mind, would be something to the effect of being able to have like a passive level where if you like literally walk right in front of a cop who, like, basically you'd have to have an internal AI almost for a specific police who were, or SWAT or whatever, who were tasked with finding you, that if you walk in front of those guys, or if those guys find you, then they will already be alerted to you. And then maybe it like waits a day for those individual cops to reset. And that would almost add like a layer of strategy for the player as well, because now the player can like, somehow you'd disseminate the information to the player, but this cop doesn't actually know about me. Like, obviously there'd be some press release internally with the cops that like has your information or something. So maybe like depending on the nature of your crimes or heat, maybe at some point all cops are like passively alerted for a certain amount of time. But even that, you'd want that to be really short. There's just a level of emergent gameplay that's at play when you're able to almost like pick and choose which cops to like even walk in front of or whatever. And if you're in a vehicle, it's like a little bit more understandable that they wouldn't necessarily know it's you. But if you're walking in front of a cop who was just looking for you, at least in that case, that is a problem that you've got to work backwards to resolve. And I don't know exactly how you would work a solution in there without it feeling a little bit arbitrarily restrictive to the player. But there's got to be something that you can do. And one of the other things that this made me think about, and in fact, was I was considering that the limited amount of emergent gameplay that I have seen in GTA 5 is sometimes there will actually be a car chase that doesn't even involve you, where the cops are actually chasing after somebody else and like ramming into them and executing them, and it looks ridiculous because they're like they just instantly start shooting at people who are speeding, which is that's a fucking ridiculous caricature of American police, but whatever, that works too. It's funny, even though that's probably not what they were going for, but maybe they were. Like, there is a sardonic level of like self-awareness and humor in GTA when you can, like, when you actually can take enough time away from suffering through the gameplay to realize that, like all of the radio stations and like the Weasel News and stuff. So there is a level of self-awareness there, and there's a level of like satire being there at play. So maybe that is actually intentional, and it makes for an actually interesting emergent experience. But it's like, I can count on what I've played this game for, like, probably significantly way too long, way more than it deserves, and it's probably something like 40 hours or so. And maybe a little bit less.
Actually, I gotta ask you though.
Yeah, go ahead.
How far are you into the single player?
I let's see. We did the Merryweather heist that required the scuba thing or like the submarine, and then after that we did a bunch of stuff where we have to steal cars. I think we stole 4 out of 5 cars for that Devon guy, and then yeah. So we did the Z type
near the end,
steal, and oh, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, so it's I haven't played the whole thing just yet, but I did play a bunch recently in preparation for the show, so that I would have a little bit more anecdotes. But that's the thing is I've played for so long, like a lot of single player, a lot of multiplayer co-op, and I can count on one hand how many times I was in the middle of committing a crime, or not even committing a crime necessarily, but like doing something that would alert the police, and police were literally there to witness it. And when that happens, it's like, oh, I kind of fucked up there because I just wasn't expecting the cops to literally be within like eyesight of this when I'm like running over a pedestrian or something. And like, well, oh shit, I like the cops are right there. Like and that almost never happens. It feels like the police are only exist to come after you when you have a heat level instead of existing as like an emergent force. Yeah.
Unless you have a wanted level, they only spawn like as pedestrians, not even pedestrians, just basically they stand still next to the police stations themselves, which are not marked on the map, so you probably don't even know they're there.
Yeah, well, I've seen some cop cars driving around and stuff without me having a heat level, but again, it's very minor.
Sometimes they spawn when they're chasing other people. Like, you can see them chase other people, and they spawn that way. But they don't just spawn on their own unless you have like a wanted level that you got to read off, and the cars are still there, and you run into them even though they're not looking for you anymore. Similar to the Franklin situation.
Yeah.
But they don't actually, like, they're not part of the actual traffic files, if that makes sense, internally. They don't just spawn as part of the traffic at all.
Yeah, and that's something that's so weird. It feels like they should have.
It used to be, they used to spawn alongside other traffic in pretty much all the other GTA games, except for 5. I don't know about 4. I didn't play 4 for very long. So I don't know about that game. But in all the other GTA games, like GTA 3, GTA 2, GTA San Andreas, GTA Vice City, they all spawn as part of the traffic. I don't know why in 5 they don't. It's kind of weird. And as far as the self-awareness goes, I think a lot of people, when GTA 5 came out, they felt like they were basically trying to one-up Saints Row 3 in terms of the like lunacy aspect and a lot of the humor as well.
Yeah, we talked about Saints Row 3 and 4 a little bit in the previous episode, and we talked about how like it basically jumped the shark and went into 2 absurd levels, and
exactly,
almost a celebration of laziness.
They dumped down the game immensely compared to Saints Row 1 and 2, especially on the Emergent gameplay style. It feels very, very scripted.
Everything is so prescriptive. Yeah, that's my main problem with the series overall, is that, and with these kinds of games, if it's meant to be open world or player driven or whatever term you want to use, like you have to let the player dictate the pace to some extent. You have to give them the tools so that they can at least dictate the pace, and then have a passive pace that the game world moves at, maybe in certain areas or certain missions or whatever. Like, I was having a bit of a conversation about this with Veek some time ago, but a real open world game, what a real open world game should have is like, there should not be a transitionary state between entering a mission and just being in the normal game world, which is what you see in GTA 5 and all these other games, where you've got to go to a certain person or make a phone call or whatever, and then you start a mission, and then if you stray from the course at any point, the mission is like canceled, or you have to restart the mission or something like that. Like, it's so limited and scripted in that sense, where it's supposed to be open-ended. Like, the missions really should be like, maybe, okay, assassinate a target or silence a target or whatever, and then maybe give me options to do that without violence, like maybe I kidnap him and intimidate him or something, where it's a little bit more psychological or something like that, and then maybe I crash a plane into his apartment, maybe I snipe him from across the way. Like, if there's a bunch of different ways for me to get down a job, then that's essentially the equivalent of being able to express my personality through the gameplay and then tell that story a little bit differently. And that's a lot better than one of the assassination missions that Franklin goes on for Lester in the story is, and I think it was a side content anyway, it wasn't even like primary stuff, but you can go into an assassination mission where it requires you to drive to the top of a parking garage, and like the top floor, and then tells you to equip a sniper that you might not even have owned before this mission. And then like you kill the guy, and then it's very heavily implied that the fastest way out is to drive off of a stunt jump little platform that's off the top of the parking garage, very conveniently placed there. And like at that point, you've got all the elements of a movie scene and none of the elements of gameplay. I'm literally just pushing buttons in a sequence because you told me to do so. And I think that's a massive issue. And speaking of emergent gameplay, and speaking of your ideas that you referenced earlier in the podcast about having ways for the player to interact in a much more dynamic way to stymie police activity, to slow them down, to slow response times and stuff, that is significantly more exciting and interesting, and speaks to a level of like player control where you set the stage, you give the AI and like the world that you're working within, you give that a sort of behavior, you give that a baseline, and like this is the call and response type stuff that you can expect, and it's up to the player to find solutions to the problems that they're going to face, where there is not really any opportunity for the player to control things nearly as much. In fact, the longer the game goes on in single player, the more controlled I feel, and the less control I feel like I actually have to exert over the game.
Yeah. And well, I guess a big problem here is what a lot of people call the outdated Rockstar game design style, basically. So essentially, GTA 2 is really two game styles into one. On one hand, they have like the open world stuff, which is similar to many other open world games. Not even necessarily like crime-related games, like, I don't know, like Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, for example, just to name a very popular game that many people already have played. But also other games like survival games, for example, where you can basically be out and about in the desert and you have to watch out for cougars or whatever, just as you mentioned earlier. But I think an issue is that for their missions, basically, they want to be like this bombastic movie-style experience, like Uncharted or Last of Us or whatever, right? That's kind of what they're going for. But it's very scripted and undercooked. And in the open world section, they want to have this dynamic world where you can do anything, but it's also very undercooked and just boring and underdeveloped. So you get two different styles of games, and none of them are really compelling. That's really the issue that I have. They it's like they're trying to fit their feet into two shoes, and neither of the two fit.
Yeah, and they're both completely different styles. So not only do they not fit the feet, but they don't even like match each other, right? So that's a pretty good analogy, I think.
The two elements don't even interact with much. They don't even interact much of the time, I would say. Like apart from missions where you literally have to just drive from point A to point B and do nothing else. You probably played a few of those already.
Yeah.
Especially the side missions. You literally do nothing except drive from point A to point B and listen to some inane dialogue, like the fucking weed missions, for example.
Yeah. And oh man, and the co-op stuff as well that I've experienced so far is literally just like, it's so insanely distracting when you're trying to do a task for a heist and Lester is just babbling in your ear literally the entire duration of a mission. I counted, I like kept track, and he was talking the whole mission with like, maybe there was 1 or 2 minutes where he didn't speak. And
that's the first heist, right? The one with
the one I was just doing in the casino. This is in co-op, not even in single player. Yeah, there's a casino heist. I don't even know if there is a casino heist in single player. Probably not.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, in co-op, he's basically just yelling at you to like giving you every single idiot's first step to do this and do that. Like you walk up to an elevator and he's like, "You got to swipe your key card," or if it's a hack, it's like, "I'm plugging into the hack," or something. He's just like talking the whole time. And then when you finally leave with the goods, he's like obviously he's talked the whole time that you're trying to get out with the heist, and then when you're actually out, he's like he delivers the same line of dialogue you've heard every single time you've completed this heist, where it's like a minute plus of him just rambling about his big plans and how this is an epic score, which maybe is fitting the first time, even though it is just exposition. Maybe at least has some place, but every other time that you listen to this, like you don't need every single time to hear this guy talk and talk you through the same mechanics and the same experience and the same like everything. There was no like care put into how that worked out at all. So that was massively frustrating for me.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like that also for most of the other online heists. Although I will say that as bad as the heists are in many ways, because they're really just glorified movies disguised as games for the most part, they still feel like they're the one aspect of the game that felt like it had the most effort put into it compared to everything else. Like, at least like they have custom animations made specifically for them. They have more or less at times complex objectives that are just a bit more than just drive from point A to point B, which is a lot of what other missions require you to do. So as underwhelming as they are, they're still the best part of the game, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, it's a backhanded compliment, isn't it? Like, I actually see some effort put into this, but it's still terrible. And why didn't you put any effort into anything else, by the way?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same story for the single player. I don't know if you've done all the single player heists. I don't think you've done them all yet, but I don't know what approach you took, because the game allows you to take two approaches, the covert one and the exposed one. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, aggressive and all the or whatever. I did the covert one for the jewelry heist anyway. But it still ends in you getting caught and found out by Trevor anyway, so it doesn't actually have that much of an impact on the broader.
All the other covert ones are fucking terrible. For the submarine one, if you do the covert one, you just basically drive a submarine underwater. You can even see anything. Then you drive back, and that's the heist. That's all you do. Whereas if you do the open one, I think you actually have to assault a ship or something. It's a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. You're stuck in one place as a turret named Franklin, and you have to snipe people.
Yeah. Well, Michael sneaks around.
Yeah.
It's lame, but it's better than just driving.
It's better than driving a submarine the whole way. Yeah. The other really stupid aspect too is that they obviously want you to switch between all of the characters at the same time, which defeats the purpose of them having AI at all, in my opinion. And there's a play you make to get away with, like, you smash into an armored car. And this is another mission for the FBI or FIB, I guess, because they can't call them FBI probably.
Yeah. They used to call them FBI in the older games, but they don't anymore.
I guess they got like smashed by the American government or something. The only thing I can say about that is there's a sequence here where you're stuck with, you've got all three of your story characters. One of them is up on top of a roof with like rocket launchers and sniper rifles. You've got Franklin, who's just got a regular rifle, and Michael, who's just got a regular rifle, and they're on the ground after doing most of the legwork to get the contents of the armored car, and the cops start to show up, and this is the only time where you defeat the cops by like outlasting them and killing them all, and then you can leave. Like, that never happens in normal gameplay. If it was something like you can blow up enough cops in the middle of Emergent gameplay to like have them call off and regroup.
Yeah, I remember that.
That would be fucking great. That actually was pretty interesting as a mechanic. Like, we can choose now to continue trying to outrun them, or in the mission you couldn't. You had to kill them all. But in theory, if that was applied to the actual gameplay, suddenly, oh wow, you've got an opportunity. You got a couple of different ways you can go about this. You can, bleed them out, destroy a bunch of them and have them regroup and send them packing, and then like try to escape before the reinforcements get in. Or you could just try to outrun them like normal. And that would be really interesting, at least as like one extra option for you to be able to do that. Like maybe another one would be you could like bribe some people to like call them off or something. I don't know. That would obviously cost money, but maybe that's like something you do if you're desperate. There's so many different things you could do that would play into like the lore, quote unquote, the story framing of the setting.
It's just a script.
At the end of the day, in this case, it's just literally a scripted sequence where you don't actually have a choice. You have to kill them all, and then this thing that never happens in Emergent gameplay happens in this scripted sequence. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. Thanks. That's what I want out of my video games anyways, for them to be movies and me to like play the part of a cameraman and an actor and all this shit.
Yep, that's exactly the issue. Where it's like they had a good idea and then they decide, oh, let's just turn that into a script. It's not like players are going to care. Players are fucking idiots, didn't you know? And unfortunately, a lot of the time, they're right, too.
Yeah, that is the other problem. Because this can navigate us directly into the other aspect of this whole thing, that GTA 5 is like one of the highest selling video games of all time. It's got massive mass appeal. And sure, some of it is due to the GTA RP stuff, the sub-scenes of like you talked about a sub-community of racing and stuff. There's all of these like subcultures or whatever that have popped up, and in theory, are also helping to fuel the game's financial success. But the fact that this product was acclaimed for what it actually provides in single player and in its very lazy, tacked-on multiplayer, that is really obscene to me. The fact that we have a product that doesn't even really function, that takes minutes to load into either story mode or online mode, and that has this low amount of content. Like, technically it has a lot of hours worth of content, but it's mostly grind or repetition, and none of it is like engaging. the only fun that you can really have in this game is literally making it yourself. And that's really the most frustrating aspect of it. Oh yeah, so you've actually just sent me a list of all of the highest grossing video games of all time, and the only one above GTA 5 is Minecraft. So that's pretty insane. That is fucking insane.
Yep. None of the other GTA games are like on the top 10 either. So
yeah, it's just this one. So this has been a massive financial success. And what do Rockstar then go ahead and do? Well, they make, these Red Dead Redemption games that I haven't played that much, so I can't comment too heavily on. But from what I've seen, it doesn't really seem like it's that different in terms of the amount of emergent gameplay versus scripted shit. And obviously, they've just gone on to not really produce much of value. And I don't even know if they're actually supporting GTA itself due to its resurgence of the RP stuff, where it is getting a lot of stream time on Twitch and it's getting a lot of attention. You would think that like a savvy developer would say, hey, we can actually come in and fix this and fix some significant issues that are hampering the quality of the game and the quality of the experience that people are having. We could come in and reduce the load times because some guy on Substack reverse engineered our fucking code and figured out that the reason why it's taking 8 years to launch the game is because we're iterating over like 30 megabytes of JavaScript one line at a time or whatever the fuck was happening. Like, why are we doing that? Let's fix that. He even fixed it himself. Like, surely you can just like do that. Like, I really don't understand why you can't even do something that somebody else has already done and just like take their code and like pay the money or whatever. Like, it's not even that much. It doesn't even require that much. And it would be seen as like a massive token of goodwill, a gesture of goodwill and support for your product. And like, it would be support for your product. It's not even like a PR thing. It actually would massively impact the enjoyability of the product, especially since like all of these people running the RP servers, according to sources within these RP environments, like people just crash all the time because of shitty code. So they have to restart. And then everything's on a standstill for everybody else because it takes like 5 minutes to launch the game in 2021 on modern hardware.
This is the only support they've ever given.
GTA publisher gets a court order to raid homes of alleged cheat developers.
Yeah, from what I know, they actually sent people, like literally sent people to the home of the 5M developer to tell them, how dare you develop an alternative to our online mode? Jeez. Don't you know that we have microtransactions that we're making money off of?
Oh, man.
Fuck you, dude. They literally tried to intimidate him.
Yeah, of course.
This is the Rockstar support that you're gonna get. And in fact, the whole thing about 5M, we might as well talk about it. Like, first of all, GTA Online is a thing that has always existed, but has largely been in the hands of private servers because I don't think any of the original games until GTA 4 had online support. So they have like there's people who basically edited the original games like Vice City and Andreas to have online multiplayer. I think only GTA 2 and GTA 4 had official multiplayer prior to this, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently, GTA 2 online was very popular back then, but I've never played it. Supposedly, it's a very moddable game in that sense.
Yeah, I imagine most of the older ones must be a little bit more on the moddable side.
Whereas GTA 4 allowed you to host your own servers, basically, and you could configure them in a way. So, for example, you could even disable the cops if you want.
Interesting.
Whereas in GTA 5, you cannot do that. You cannot customize it in any way, shape, or form. So let's say you just want to shoot people in like duels in the streets without the cops getting in the way every 2 seconds. You cannot do that. Whereas you could do that in GTA 4. So people were basically angry about it, and they decided that they wanted a version of GTA Online that they could actually customize to do whatever the fuck they want in the game. Isn't that what you actually want to do in your game? Just play it however you want?
Yeah, sure.
Instead of being forced to play it the way the developer forces you to. It's like you're playing with a box of Lego pieces and your brother constantly comes into the room to tell you how to arrange them. That's a comparison I've heard in a video some time ago. And I think it's pretty fitting. It's basically how Rockstar decides to approach the game in every way. Like even the missions themselves, if you try to do them in a way that's even slightly different than the way you're supposed to do them, you just instantly fail and have to redo it all over again. And that's also how they approach the online mode. So that's why 5M and some other alternatives that I'm not really familiar with exist. They're basically servers that people have where they can actually host mods, they can actually host, customizable settings. And they're used by some people who are really tired of the insanity of GTA Online, which is also filled with hackers. I think I believe that's still a problem. You probably run into them.
This is something I don't have a massive amount of experience with, but there were people who were saying like, "Oh yeah, this guy's just got God mode hacked on," and the other guy's like, "Hey, how did you know?" Because or whatever. So yeah, I guess that actually does, unless those were like trolls or something, which could be.
No, it definitely is a thing. I don't know if it is anymore because I haven't really played the game in years now.
Sure.
But basically, what happened is that people, you know how when you destroy a vehicle, you have to pay insurance money for that vehicle?
Yeah.
Basically, what hackers would do is they would spawn explosions on top of vehicles to destroy them immediately and attach those explosions to a certain player, so that you would instantly have to pay the money for destroying everyone's vehicles in the server just because a hacker decided to do that. So they would basically destroy your income that way. Wow. Money that maybe you even go through microtransactions, and it's just gone in an instant due to a hacker. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Rockstar didn't bother cracking down on even that because
I don't know if they did. I think they do, and then 2 days later it goes back.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It requires a longer period of time focused on like fixing it or addressing the issue than just like a one button fix.
Although it has to be mentioned that a lot of the game sales and popularity is also on consoles, where the problem is not as widespread.
Yeah. You just can't interact with the game systems as much when you're talking about a console. So
that doesn't excuse the game being a piece of shit on PC, right?
No, not at all. And that's like a major issue too. Is there are people who excuse the game of being a major piece of shit. The fact that like controlling a helicopter or an airplane requires numpad keys, like what?
Yeah, it was clearly built with a controller in mind.
Yeah. And I don't have a controller that I can just plug in. Not that I would want to anyway, because I believe that for a game that requires precision aiming sometimes, which it does feel like I get aim assisted occasionally anyway, so maybe this isn't the game for that. Maybe this isn't the hill to die on there.
If you use a controller, you get auto aim all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah. For me, it's one of those things where I'm so used to playing shooters with like mouse and keyboard. So since this game has shooting, I would like to use mouse and keyboard. And I also would like to not have to own a controller in order to experience a PC game. It's like just a basic idea of like porting it to PC is controlling, handling the control scheme. There's so many issues like that though that are like at the end of the day, they're so easy to resolve just by like, I guess I can resolve them by changing the keybinds myself, but like just make it so that they're a little bit less insane, please. And the fact that like the default experience is that bad. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed this. There's actually a cooldown. Shooters. Wait, what happened?
But you're used to playing shooters, but I would not say that this game is going to give a game like CSGO a run for its money anytime soon. I think the shooting and walking mechanics are pretty terrible overall.
Yeah, we can get into that. But just before I do, I did want to mention something really insane to me, that the escape button has a cooldown to bring up the menu. Like if you leave the menu, you have to wait. You have to hit escape for like 3 seconds before you can open it again. And the menu itself is a laggy piece of shit. So I don't know what's going on there, but they really have no idea what they're doing on the programming side of this. Like it's so bad.
Yeah, that's just embarrassing. What the fuck? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I have plenty of hardware in terms of like, it's definitely not an issue of my side that like needs to be fixed on my end, basically. So yeah, essentially one of the major flaws that I've noticed, aside from just the performance and the startup times and the escape menu cooldown, is like you mentioned it just now, the fact that the core mechanics of engaging with the gameplay, the shooting, the reliance on aiming down sights instead of being able to hip fire, even the cover system to me feels really clunky. It's one of those games where it doesn't automatically put you in cover. You have to opt into it, but it rarely feels like you go exactly where you want to go. Precision is almost non-existent in this game, where
absolutely
you want to like attach yourself to a certain ledge or even to dynamic cover like a vehicle, and it's the same thing actually with trying to enter a vehicle with the F key, the action key to actually enter say start riding a motorcycle or enter a car or something. That stuff is very imprecise as well. I'll be looking at a car, but because that's not the closest car to me, when I hit F, I'll like go the other way. I'll start turning the other way, and you can interrupt these animations, thankfully, but it is ridiculous. Like it is pretty stupid that, oh yeah, here's me trying to enter my brother's car, and instead I start entering my car because I happen to be like a couple pixels closer to it or something. Like why is that there when it's not even on my screen? And I'm even moving I'm holding W to move towards a different vehicle. And everything feels very, very clunky. And that lack of precision is massively noticeable, especially when you're using mouse and keyboard, because you're used to precision. Like you said earlier, I'm used to precision of games like CS. I'm used to precision of games like even the classic FPS games that we've played together, or that you joined the playthrough of. So you're familiar with those. That's like almost your bread and butter. And it just feels so different night and day in terms of moving around. And I can't even really say that driving is significantly better than other games. I guess maybe it's just an area where I haven't played that many games, so I don't know that much about the feel of driving around. And they do have to account for a bunch of different kinds of vehicles, and the handling can be off on some. But it does feel like that's adequate. It's not like the first area I would go to make improvements to the core gameplay. But even that doesn't feel like it blows me away and it's like, oh, so incredible. It feels like maybe that is where they put a significant portion of their attention into. But even then, most of the time you're driving in like a straight line from one area to another, right? It doesn't even really like get leveraged that much. It would be different if I have to master the driving mechanics so that I can avoid police and like do interesting moves. And I pull off some interesting moves, like somehow gliding between two like giant trucks or something and then coming out the other end without getting smashed. And that actually it does end up like being oddly satisfying. But is there really anything deeper to this mechanic than a couple of showpiece moves that you'll do sometime around? You obviously need to have a little bit of a mechanic, like something mechanical about the experience that is actually enjoyable, and that shows that you've mastered this for more than just like racing against your friends in some other game mode or whatever. It's like it feels like even that is kind of undercooked in that sense. So you obviously brought this topic up. So what are your thoughts in general on like the mechanics themselves?
Well, like I said, the game I just don't think feels very good to play. And I don't think any of the GTA games ever had good controls, to be honest. All of them either felt very clunky, like the first games had almost tank controls, I guess you could say. And then all the 3D games, they just don't feel very responsive at all. Saints Row 1 and 2 actually control much better, despite being even older games than GTA 5. They have like much more natural shooting. It's still like, like it's not going to set the world on fire or anything, but they're much more performant. You can actually shoot while moving in a much more reasonable way. You don't even have to aim really, because you're constantly aiming in Saints Row. It's more like an FPS in that sense. You don't have to like stop and take aim if you want to do anything. Like, I'm pretty sure in GTA 5, you cannot just shoot forward and expect to do anything. You actually need to hold the aim button to do anything.
Yeah, it will shoot. There is hip firing, but it's wildly inaccurate. So yeah, in order to actually do something.
In Saints Row, that's not the case. You always have a crosshair that always indicates where you're going to shoot whenever you hit the button. So it feels much better. And in the older GTA games, you also couldn't shoot while behind the wheel. You could only shoot like sideways. It's really weird. And in GTA 5, they still managed to fuck it up by having a really terrible interface for changing weapons while you're in the car. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Yeah, you can't actually open the whole menu at the same time. Like you can when you're on the ground. You have to just tab through stuff, which is pretty atrocious.
It's absolutely terrible. Whereas in Saints Row, you can just open the weapon wheel, which is where GTA 5 got it from, by the way. It started off in Saints Row 1.
Oh, okay.
And you can actually open it even inside vehicles, so it feels much more natural. And I just think I think the driving is pretty good. I think it strikes a good balance between arcade style physics without being completely ridiculous, where you can turn in a car in 1 second without any side effects. So you actually have to brake if you're going at high speeds, which is a little bit more reasonable. So I can see why the game is very appealing to racing fans who have their own custom servers up on 5M. That's probably the only aspect of the game that I think is any good. Although, since I'm talking about the racing, I guess I can relate some of the problems that the racing community has faced and why so many of them have decided to flock to 5M. So basically, in the game, you have classes of vehicles. So you have supercars, you have sports cars, muscle cars, trucks, etc., etc. They're actually like different classes. In online, I don't know if you've ever done a race, but you basically get to choose what class you want to race with. So, for example, supercars cannot race against trucks, which I guess makes sense. Although it would be nice to have the option,
Yeah, sure.
So the problem is that Rockstar is completely terrible when it comes to balancing these classes. So they basically destroy the balance of these classes a million times over. So, for example, let's say that in 2017 there was like I don't know, 5 cars that were at the top of the pace of a class. So they were pretty quick, but each had individual strengths and weaknesses. Like some was better in a straight line, another car was better at turning, another had better acceleration, etc., etc. And then they just released an overpriced DLC car, which just smashes them all together. So if you want to race that specific class, you don't want to have anything besides this one DLC car that has just been released. And they just do that over and over and over. So they force you to buy new cars if you want to be competitive in racing, which is in itself is terrible. But another inexcusable thing they did is that they made certain cars the wrong class, and they never fixed it. So, for example, there is a vehicle in the game, which is the Moonbeam. I'm actually going to show you what it looks like, just so you just can get an idea of this. So this is the Moonbeam right here. This one. It's uploading on Discord. There it is. So this is the Moonbeam, and it's in the muscle class.
Okay.
It's clearly a van, right?
Yeah.
It's literally a van. And it would have been very competitive in the van class. It would have been like the second best van, pretty competitive even with the first one in terms of performance and handling. But because it's in the muscle class, for whatever reason, you can only race it against other muscle cars. But it's completely useless. It's fucking terrible. And they never fix it despite petitions and stuff. And they did this over and over when they place cars like in completely random classes for no reason. This is just one example. There's many more. And they also made certain cars not raceable at all for whatever reason. And so this is basically a major reason why the custom servers had so much traction, because they just decided, well, if Rockstar aren't going to fix this fucking class misallocation problem, we're just going to fix it ourselves. So in this case, they can actually race this vehicle, the Moonbeam, in the vans class alongside other vans.
Right.
But you cannot do that in GTA Online Vanilla. It's impossible due to the completely dumb and restrictive lobby system that they have for jobs, which is what they're called internally, which is anything from missions to races to deathmatch to whatever. And I imagine they're also still very slow. They used to be very slow, the matchmaking system. I don't know if it still is, but it used to be very, very slow at loading and organizing games. I don't know if you've experienced that too much.
Well, just in terms of like actually getting into like from a lobby into a proper game, like seed or a map or whatever, an instance, yeah. I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Performance is definitely not this game's strong suit, either from loading.
It doesn't happen dynamically at all. Like you just don't go to a thing and then the whole thing starts immediately. You actually have to wait a long ass time for everything to load, which is a pretty poor way of going about it, but it's just what it is, I guess.
Yeah, well, when there are no other opportunities or no other alternatives, then even when you make your own, you get destroyed and intimidated by Rockstar security guards. That actually sounds like a mission in GTA 5. Intimidate cheat coder. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that's something that you might actually do in the game. So the fact that it's a real thing that happened is pretty insane.
Yeah, I think in GTA 5 you blow up in one of the early missions. You blow up Steve Jobs impersonator or something.
Yeah. It's the guy from CEO of Life Invader.
I think it's supposed to be a parody of Mark Zuckerberg, maybe. Yeah, and you just basically kill him. And yeah, so this will probably be along the lines of that. But yeah, like as I was saying, the balance issues and the class misallocation issues, alongside the fact that in general not being able to race the same cars, like cars of similar pace, just because they're in different classes is pretty much bullshit. So let's say you have a pretty slow sports car, which is however in very much comparable pace to a sedan. Like, why would you not want to race them together if you want? You just can't, because the interface prevents you to do it. It's just yet another example of how Rockstar really likes to force you into doing things in a very, very specific way. The only way they want you to do it. If you do it in any other way, then you should not be playing your game, bro. You should just, I don't know, get sued or something.
Yeah, get intimidated by people. That really, like, obviously it's an extreme example. The whole the news story that it'll be linked in the description for other people who want to read it, but it's just one of those things that really baffles me. The whole idea that they apply all of these arbitrary restrictions and then don't offer any sort of like interaction for server organizers or whatever, that where you can like change things up, remove those restrictions, do something differently. There's so many things that you ought to be able to do in a game that's, realistically speaking, about chaos and all of this other stuff. The idea that you're able to actually make something happen and be able to say like, all right, here's my environment, here's my custom server, here's my custom game rules, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And to an extent, people can do that by writing like really hacky plugins that are written in stupid languages, but there should be like a more first party endorsed solution to this. And
yeah, there isn't.
You know, the fact that there isn't, the fact that it's instead the only response you get seems to be hostility, even though it's literally keeping your game in the minds of everybody else. It's led to countless sales that wouldn't have otherwise come into fruition, I'm sure. Like, there's actually a lot of... Rockstar owes a lot of success to these sub-communities that have popped out. The fact that they just... Instead, the only response that you've gotten so far has been hostile, I think tells you a lot about this company, like what this company actually does and what they think, like how they... The contempt that they hold for any of their players that don't want to just shut up and take whatever Rockstar gives them. You know, maybe it's more of a corporate thing than a developer intent thing, but it reads the same. You know what I mean? Like it reads like, oh, these guys are...
Yeah,
you know,
it doesn't really matter if
you know?
it's Take-Two or Rockstar doing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretty much coming from the same source.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a massive negative influence on the space, on the community, that like... People want to say stuff like, oh, you know, imagine how, like, look how big Rockstar or look how big GTA is now that the role-playing community's taken off, and with these other like people just playing online in general, look how big all this stuff is. That's crazy. Well, imagine how big the community could get if the game actually ran at a reasonable like level of performance. Imagine how big the game could get if the people who are doing all of these all this organization of other subcommunities didn't have to like literally program their own hacky shit that doesn't even perform properly and crashes people's instances. Imagine,
but unfortunately,
that
that's not really the focus.
Yeah,
because
of course.
At the end of the day, they're just focusing on casuals. GTA is a casual game, mostly for the console audience, and I think another reason related to what you're talking about here is that another aspect rather is that I remember when GTA Online first came out. It was a fucking disaster, by the way. I remember like the first month or so, all people's accounts were wiped, like they were accidentally destroyed, so they had to make new accounts. And
you lose all
I remember
a
reviewer, like when GTA Online was first released, the reviewer said, so it's got a lot of issues, but there's nothing else quite like it at the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason for its success. There's not really, at least, I don't know, maybe there is now, I'm not really sure, but certainly when it was new in like 2014, maybe, there wasn't really anything that's quite like it. So there is no real healthy competition for the game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's really a major issue. And ultimately, they make a lot of their money from just casuals and their microtransactions for their fucking shitty, overly expensive cars.
Yeah, the fact that there's microtransactions in the game is pretty embarrassing. Like, the fact that the social club has such horrible interface and like everything is just terrible. You have to hit caps lock in order to open up the UI for the social club. It's like, why is it caps lock? Like that's so triggering for me. So
yeah, that's terrible.
That alone should just be a laughing stock, and it is. But again, like you're saying, like, okay, yeah, it's a game that's mostly targeted towards casuals, but there's a not insignificant amount of sales, of attention, of active players that aren't casuals, that are instead like hardcore enthusiasts who would and have actually done a lot of legwork for what is required for the game. If you just give them the tools, you don't even give them the tools, and people are reverse engineering it to improve performance, and they're like running all of these crazy experiments, and they're doing all of the server plugins and stuff. Like there's people out there who are like, it's sort of like with Brood War, with our community, with the Frauds Club. It's the people out there who are literally remaking the game at this point and trying to like reverse engineer shit, and it's spawning like again, when you don't have any support, you get what's happening with StarCraft. You get like like us pivoting to making our own engine from scratch. And you get other developers deciding to fuck off and like work on some other inferior game just because it's slightly easier to mod. You get people who are leaving and abandoning the scene, and at some point we'll be gone from StarCraft, and we'll have our legacy, so to speak, but we'll be working on our own content. And yeah, that is actually really nice. Like, it's actually a good thing in my opinion that we're able to do that, but it didn't have to be that way. Like, if we just had the source access, and we would have rewritten everything no matter how bad the code was. And like, we've already basically done that anyway, despite the fact that we don't have source access, and we have to do it in a really hackneyed way. So that's that's the illusion, the connection that I'll draw to GTA, where there are people out there who are doing the same things that we're doing to StarCraft to GTA. There are people out there who are doing that, and they would be able to do so much more. You maybe can make it a numbers game argument and say it wouldn't really matter that much, but I guarantee you it would cost you nothing, and it would lead to more sales.
Absolutely.
So there's not really any reason to not do it. I
absolutely agree.
Yeah, it's just dumping the code, right?
That's not what the parent company thinks. They just don't. They just think it's going to be an issue for them somehow. It's why so many corporations are hostile to the mere idea of open source, for example.
There are some legitimate arguments against open source for things like, oh, well, then hackers have like a field day with it or whatever. I think that you can work around that. I don't think it's like an open and shut case that because
actually, I think they did a study some time ago, whereas being open source doesn't really benefit the hackers that much unless your game is just very shittily programmed.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is you can safeguard against it just with better programming ethics. And
exactly,
the community who has access to the source code that care about competitive integrity they're gonna find some solution to that themselves too. Like, you're actually empowering people who would care that much more about the gameplay experience. This draws back into a completely different topic, but the people who actually play your game will know a lot more about like what the game needs, or where they'll have a better pulse on what's up with that. And if you as the developer don't play your own game, then of course you're not going to have any idea. Like, it's the same thing as like people using tools. Like the people who made the map. Oh, there's some GTA cops in the background. The people who made the map editor that I'm using for StarCraft, if that guy actually used his own tool, he would know how ridiculously stupid it is that there's like X limitations and Y thing that's broken, and like he would have to fix it. And I would have to fix it. I would fix it, but of course, instead of being able to, it's closed source, so I can't. And he doesn't use it, so he won't. So like, this is an obvious case where the corollary is, if there's issues with a game, the best people to look at for improving the game and fixing those issues it's often not the developers, because they don't play it. It's the actual people who play it, and they can't do it because they don't have the tools.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. Unfortunately, like I said, it's just not the way they see it. They just see it as a threat to their business immediately. They don't even do any research on it, really. They just immediately go into attack dog mode, basically. Street dog mode, I guess you could say. Street
dog mode, indeed. So we talked about the mechanics, we've talked about the performance, we've talked about the subculture and the sub-communities. And we've obviously talked about how it's received critical and financial acclaim. It's one of the literally top 2 of all selling games all time. GTA 5 is just a very weird case, because it's laziness at its finest, and it's rewarded at every turn for it, it feels like. And it could be so much better and bigger if they had done the no-cost effort of releasing source code or adding community support or whatever. And it just feels like there's no better crow pill, so to speak, than to look at a game like GTA 5 and see that it succeeds, and that should like wake you up. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, oh shit, yeah, you can literally do like the worst job possible and get the most amount of money, like almost the most amount of money possible.
That actually reminds me. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I experienced this due to a bug in the original version of the game that I played on PS3.
Okay.
So there was a mission where I basically soft-locked for whatever reason. Like, there was a script that was supposed to happen that didn't. And so I kept trying to reset it over and over until I just kept killing myself over and over trying to make it work. And eventually I got a prompt to skip the scene. So the game literally has if you die too many times, the game literally offers you the option to skip forward.
Wow. I did not know about that.
If you cannot beat this mission, then okay, you can just carry on with the rest of the game. Doesn't matter if you suck, if you cannot even win this rail shooter that's completely easy because it has auto aim. You don't even have to try to beat it. You can still go ahead and, play the rest of the game. Go ahead,
That is pretty vile, isn't it? That's pretty disgusting.
And again, the only reason I even know about this is because of the fucking bug. So that's amazing.
Yeah, because the missions themselves aren't hard. They're just annoying to deal with because of the fact that you have to go exactly the way that the developer intends.
Yeah, like the fucking mission in the docks where you have to place containers in specific ways.
Yeah, why? Like
that one.
Also, anytime you're landing a helicopter with these stupid ass console controls that suck, and you land the helicopter like literally 5 feet from the circle, but then you have to pick it up and put it back because it's not exactly in the circle. Like, fuck you! I landed in the pool. Let me out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just ridiculous. That's the same kind of shit, right? It's comparatively minor, but it's so fucking annoying, and it's so easy to fix too. I mean, the whole thing is easy to fix on a conceptual level, maybe less so on a programming level. That is inarguably easy to fix, though.
Yep. Unfortunately, it's not something we're going to see. I don't think the game at this point is going to change that much. And I have to say that the microtransaction focus got really started when, I want to say when the yachts come out. Let me actually look it up when that was. GTA Online, Executives and Other Criminals, that was in 2015. Wow, that's a long time ago. Feels like yesterday. That's when the game really embraced the microtransactions-fueled madness. Prior to that, it was relatively more mild. Like, things weren't as expensive, so you could pretty much afford everything you wanted, or almost everything you wanted, if you just played like everything in the game. Like, you did all the missions, all the heists.
So yeah, it's a bit of a grind, but you can at least actually like achieve it.
Yeah, whereas after that, you just had to grind the same missions over and over and over if you wanted to have any hope of doing anything. That's when the game just decided, basically when they realized that they may as well take advantage of the whales that they are playing the game.
Yeah, it's so sickening. It's something that's like not even that difficult to resolve either, to be honest. At least from my opinion, like you just don't. They already have the highest selling video game of all time, the second highest selling video game of all time. Like literally, not even hyperbole, and yet they still want more. They somehow
it's never enough.
If they needed more, that would be really bad. If they had such a horribly mismanaged budget that selling 140 million copies or whatever the fuck they sold is not enough to finance their stuff, that would be an embarrassment. That would be insane. But I don't think they need more. I think they just want more. And that's really sickening too, because at least you can understand if there's a need for the operation to like, I still don't agree with it, but I can at least understand it. I can't understand the wanton greed where like you're not even providing a service. You're literally just, it's a skip button for people who have more disposable income than they know what to do with and don't care that they're contributing towards the literal demise of their hobby.
Yep. And again, like it's something that they did again. They did again the same thing for Red Dead Redemption 2 and other games as well. Like I don't think any game that they're going to work on is going to be any better in that regard. I think GTA 6 is in early development at this point, and it's probably going to be even more online focused, even more microtransaction fueled. Knowing them.
And they've seen the magic, right? They've seen like what it can do for microtransactions, for online playtime, for mind share, this concept of like you're always thinking about a product, so you're more likely to engage with it. People are thinking about GTA 5 because of the RP stuff, because their favorite Twitch streamer is streaming about it like 12 hours a day or whatever. Like because of all this, and they realize that obviously it wouldn't be possible to even achieve that without having the opportunity, like essentially without having the online component be as robust, almost ironically is said here, but like having it have the features that it does. So yeah, maybe there's even a chance that they lean into that so much in a cynical way, not for the right reasons, but cynically they lean into it for long enough to or properly enough to actually produce a more like quality gameplay experience, but it will probably be buried underneath so many layers of microtransactions and stupidity that it won't be worth engaging with anyway, it's a real shame. I mean, there's a game that I don't know how familiar you are with that I'm not personally massively familiar with, but I know what it represents to the industry, and it's Genshin Impact, which is essentially a gacha game from like the mobile market that is finding success on PC, which is really scary because if you start to bridge that market and you just have the expectation that you have to spend money to like refuel to play more missions or to unlock every single character in the game. And it's just like having insane amounts of success. That's pretty sad. And also spending money for the opportunity to gamble for a character, not even actually spending money on a character. Like that's the gambling side of it. And if that is taking off at a like ridiculous level, if that's the future, so to speak, which it seems to be, then I wouldn't be surprised if games like GTA 5 or 6 rather are able to like capitalize upon that trend, basically.
Yeah. I mean, all I can say about Genshin Impact or whatever it's called is that first of all, it's an anime game. Literally, you just play as
I've got no
character.
interest in it, obviously, just because of that. Like
the only thing I can say about it is that I remember people used to make fun of Koreans and Japanese and Chinese and other Asian people for playing gacha games.
Yeah.
And Genshin Impact has proved that the West is every bit as vulnerable as those other people were to it, because now we are the same. Now we are the Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese. Now we are doing the same thing we were laughing at them for doing. And obviously, I'm not talking about myself because I've never played that piece of.
No, we as in the West, yeah, for sure. Because I've never installed it, never played it. I've barely even looked at it. I just know what.
I know some people who play it, and unfortunately, I guess it's just the curse of the MMO, right?
Yeah,
like it's the same thing as World of Warcraft, as I don't know, League of Legends. They're all games that want you to pay all the time as you keep playing. Yep. It's not that you buy it once and it's once and done, right? You just have to continuously play and pay in order to play. No matter if it's a subscription, if it's skins, if it's whatever, it's just stuff that you have.
The new champion that comes out and he's busted for 2 weeks, so you can win a lot of games by buying this guy now or whatever. Yeah, so insane shit like that. Will always be like that. And that is another component of it too, right? Is that I kind of break it down like this. You've got the slippery slope of I think this is an honest attempt. I think that there's more honesty to this method, but it did technically start with expansion packs. These aren't new games, but they're additional content. And okay, an expansion pack. Well, you're paying for like another chapter of the story mode. You're paying for an expanded multiplayer, whatever you're paying for. And then it turns into, downloadable content alongside this evolving method of a subscription fee for MMOs. You've got MMOs and expansion packs being rolled into one with World of Warcraft, where they expect you to pay like an upfront fee of $60 or whatever it is every single time a new expansion comes out, which is like every other year. And in addition to that, you got to keep your $14.99 subscription fee per month or whatever it is. So like these numbers might not be 100% accurate to World of Warcraft, and I'm sure they've changed down the years as well. So take those specifics with a grain of salt. But the idea is you're paying a monthly fee and also an upfront fee every 2 years. So the fact that they could get away with that is like, obviously that leads to, well, how much deeper can we go? How much harder can we fuck you, so to speak? Like
the floodgates are open at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they start to think about, okay, expansion packs turn into DLC. We can literally finish our game at a later date and charge you for it. And then day one DLC comes in where this content could have been rolled into the game. In fact, is probably already installed. And when you download it, you're downloading a 1 kilobyte text file that has a code in it that unlocks the DLC for this account. And then you start to get the always online DRM, because if you can start to like unlock that shit yourself because it's literally installed onto your machine, then, well, we don't want that. So you've got to have always online DRM to check to see if your account has access to this stuff. And it all goes back to essentially the slippery slope of going from one area of monetization to a much more nefarious way. Like I'm a firm believer of like pay for a product because that's what it should be. It should be an exchange. I pay you money for the product, and the money is supposed to be compensation for your hard work. And I think that's just and fair and makes perfect sense. But when it's a subscription fee, everything is a subscription fee now, by the way. Like I was trying to like, okay, there's games, there's like MMOs and stuff. If you want to have any software like Adobe Premiere or something, that's a subscription fee instead of it being a one-time payment. It was a ridiculously overpriced piece of software when it was a one-time payment, but it was a one-time payment still. And I can see an argument for like, if I'm going to make like, 30 times that, then it's a fair price maybe, or whatever, just like using the software for video processing or film editing or whatever you're doing. So then you go from that to thinking like, okay, you've got the opportunity to charge me a subscription service for my software and for my like, MMO games or whatever. What else are you going to charge me for? How about Solitaire, a literal card game, in order to play without ads popping up every 5 seconds or every 5th game or whatever? I have to pay a subscription service. Can you fucking believe this? That it's a subscription fee. That's a real thing. Is that on
Windows now?
Well, yeah, it's on Windows 10 and through the store. It's on your mobile device. Anywhere you want to play Solitaire, it's ads all up the place. You don't pay like $3.99 to disable ads, and I would say that's kind of overpriced for a fucking card game that came pre-installed on my Windows 95 machine. But okay, I guess I'll pay for it because of inflation or something. Like whatever, fucking. At least it's a one-time flat rate. But no, it's a subscription service, and that is really sickening.
Ungodly.
Yeah, that's for fucking Solitaire, dude. So if it's hit Solitaire and Mahjong tiles and whatever else, then unfortunately I don't see a way out, man. I think we're too far down. There has to be a massive collapse where consumers just say fuck this, or they're literally deprived of the choice because all of the development firms go out of business for all of their shitty budgeting and laziness and lack of quality control. Maybe then we can do something on the resurgence. Maybe then we can learn from the mistakes, because admittedly, this is like kind of uncharted territory for a lot of people. The evolving technology of the internet and stuff, there's nothing to go back on and realize like, oh yeah, this would allow us to download patches live from the ether, literally taking it out of the air and stuff. Yeah, there's nothing that tells you that. There's nothing that like makes it obvious that would actually happen. So like, sure, I get the idea that you made some mistakes and now it's too late to go back, but I have a feeling that this will be milked for quite a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately. And again, the whole thing about MMOs and multiplayer games in particular having these really shitty practices.
Yeah.
I would say, obviously, at the end of the day, like, you've probably experienced games like League of Legends having many people say it's a terrible game, but they still play it even though they say it's terrible. You've probably seen people like that.
Yeah.
I certainly have. And eventually at the end of the day, they just play it for the social aspect because they just like to play with friends. And I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying a game with friends, even if the game isn't very objectively good. As long as you're just having a good time for the social aspect, that's fine. But when you play a game that's literally exploiting you by forcing you to pay for shitty stuff like microtransactions, if you even want to stand a chance, then I think you really should get a new hobby at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I don't think you should support that because it's literally exploitation. It's just shitty practices.
Yeah, and
the find another online game.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be good. It just doesn't have to be scummy. That's really it.
Well, the other component of there's a lot of components to why games like League of Legends and I guess even Overwatch and stuff, why they have as much mind share and why they have like as much I guess appeal. But appeal is the wrong word because, as you said, there's a lot of people who hate this stuff. So like why they get as much playtime and have as many dedicated users, we'll say, even if the users themselves are disgruntled, if they're upset, if they think that it's a shit product. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I think a major component anyway is an element where the burden of blame for your loss, the responsibility for losing a game, is shifted to other people. And that's because it's a team game. So it does feel like this is a component of why, for example, 1 versus 1, like like duels in Quake, or obviously 1 versus 1 in StarCraft or in RTS, Warcraft 3 even, the 1v1s and shit like that obviously fell off. I think a component of that is that the casual player base couldn't be sustained because they could only blame the game or themselves. And when they blame the game publicly, they're laughed at usually. Even if the game actually does have some balance problems, it's usually like, well, you're opting in to play the game. So it's kind of incumbent upon you to learn about those balance problems and then navigate them, which is realistically a fair expectation. So you should be able to take responsibility for your own failures in that sense. The problem is, of course, when people just don't want to, when they're incapable of it, perhaps. I think everybody's capable of it. I don't think it's like a massive thing that is like really like takes a lot of effort, but a lot of people want to hide from that responsibility. And so you can shift the blame to, oh, this guy obviously fucked it up because he died at like 10 minutes into the game, and that like gave some money over to this other person who was able to buy this item that then fucked me. or whatever. And you can just rationalize excuses a lot easier. And it's even like agreed upon publicly when you are saying like, oh yeah, my teammates are all terrible. Like everybody's got an anecdote of a teammate actually legitimately doing it. It's actually happening, believe it or not. It's just that sometimes you're the teammate who's doing it to other people. And you don't remember those cases. You just think that was like a fluke or something. You're like, oh yeah, that was for any other number of reasons. Like I just wasn't feeling it. I was kind of tired or whatever the excuse is. And then you go back to playing and you're like, well, this guy next to me is just terrible. I hate this guy. Get him out of here. So you can kind of offload any burden that you yourself carry to take responsibility for the losses or the failures, or even like the close games that you could have won a lot quicker or whatever. There's no, like, you have to take responsibility for that on an individual basis. And I think in multiplayer PvP games, if there is a team-based element to it, then that goes out the window much easier. And that's a reason why it's more attractive, is because one reason why it's more attractive than a team, like a single player duel game, like a 1v1 game, is precisely because there's less things to blame but yourself.
Yeah. And obviously with GTA, it also has stuff like hackers and other stuff.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
Pin the blame on, like the aforementioned example of you having to pay all the damage for the cars that you didn't even blow up.
Yeah, so sudden, like, and that's a weird one too, because obviously that's like not even there are PvP elements to GTA, but I guess for the racing stuff, even you could imagine like hand waving some loss away, like of a race, like, oh well, Rockstar didn't balance this car correctly or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
So, yeah. It's a many-faced issue, obviously, but I do think that we've covered quite a bit of GTA in this show. I think we obviously set the stage, and I guess we can end the show on like the final topic, so to speak, would be something to discuss the like an alternative. You said actually that you prefer Saints Row 2, I think it is, to most of the GTA games. Is that that accurate?
Let me actually go a little bit further.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Talk about GTA games a little bit more in depth, how they were before. So what I think is the best game in the series, even though it's still highly unpolished and has a lot of problems, is GTA 2. GTA 2 is kind of an arcade game in that you have to get a high score in order to win. You don't really have to finish like a story mode. Like there is like story missions and stuff, but you don't have to do them if you don't want to do them. You just have to get a high score so that you can go to the next district of the town until you win. And you can also unlock a bunch of mini games and stuff. And Saints Row 1 and 2 are basically somewhat similar to GTA 2, except they're in 3D, whereas GTA 2 is basically a top-down game with 2D graphics. But they're similar in that GTA 2 has a 3-gang system, actually. So each district in GTA 2 that you go to has 3 gangs that you can work for, as long as you have the provided respect for them. And respect is basically a bar that you can fill by killing rival gang members. So you kill rival gang members and you can do missions for the gang, and you get money and score by doing that. And Saints Row 2 and 1, Saints Row 1 and 2 are very similar games. They're just basically, I don't know, like StarCraft and Brood War, I guess you could describe them. They take place in the same city. They have mostly the same gameplay. It's just that Saints Row 2 has different missions and different mini games and is more polished overall. But they're very similar. And basically, it's the same system, only that instead of working for the 3 gangs, you actually fight against the 3 gangs. And for example, in Saints Row 1 and 2, you actually have a wanted level system, not just for the police, but also for the rival gangs. So they will send their own vehicles after you all across the city if you piss them off hard enough. And like GTA, whereas you actually have to complete the missions if you want to beat the story, basically, you also have a strong emphasis on, first of all, being able to do the missions in whatever order you want, which is how it is in GTA 2. In Saints Row, you can also choose to do missions in different orders. So, for example, you want to fight this gang, but you then want to fight another gang. You can give up on a gang completely and go play missions for another gang instead. You can do that if you want. So it feels much more dynamic in that sense, because you can decide to play the mini games, and the mini games are more like basically arcade style stuff. I don't really know how to describe it. For example, just there is one called Rampage where you have to destroy as much stuff as possible within the time limit. It's basically pretty basic stuff, but it's fun for what it is, for what it's trying to do, just arcade gameplay, basically. And so they're similar in structure and they're similar in gameplay, only that Saints Row obviously is 3D and has a bunch of important enhancements over the basic GTA formula. For example, in GTA, even 5, you have very limited garage space. You actually have to buy more properties if you want more garage space. Whereas in Saints Row, you have infinite garage space. You can have as many cars as you want. Right. It's not really a limit in any way. And as I mentioned before, the weapon wheel, it's much more. The controls are way better. Like the mission design it's still obviously like it still has some elements of wanting to be a movie in some ways. So there are still a few missions where there's not much going on. But overall, in both GTA 2 and in Saints Row 1 and 2, there's much more of an emphasis on actual, doing stuff like shooting people, driving recklessly, evading the cops. There's much more gameplay, at least as far as that style of gameplay can provide. So I don't think they're perfect games, maybe not even great games, but at least the best that we've ever seen in terms of that style of gameplay being represented in an actual game, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
again, there's a lot more that I could talk about the games, but it's probably best for the audience to just look up some gameplay clips if they want to get an idea. But yeah, I just think they compare way better to the GTA 3D games as well as GTA 5 in particular, which is just a disaster as we've seen, and doesn't really improve on the formula in any meaningful way, unfortunately.
Well, that's another component too, is that GTA 5 seems like it actually has dumbed down aspects of the game. Like you mentioned earlier, the gang system, which is completely absent in the 5th title. So the fact that like you can't actually, there's sort of vestiges of it, I guess. If I really look hard enough, I can imagine like the fact that you've got Lester who you can do missions for, and there's like side quests and stuff. Maybe that makes some sense. It's like, oh yeah, it's sort of like doing missions for a gang, but it's so watered down by comparison, and it is just like the same junk over and over again with a bunch of dialogue. Like another this is kind of a bit of a stretch maybe, but obviously you're familiar with like Flame Knives and Eon of the Hawk over as the Brood War custom content. For me, GTA 5 kind of has a similar element where it clearly took a lot of time and effort to develop, write the script, get the voice acting done. Like it's the same thing as all of the insane gimmick triggers and all of the ridiculous anime dialogue and
this actually reminds me, sorry to interrupt. This reminds me of a pre-release interview with developers where they actually said, we consider the placement of every tree in the map. So that's what they said.
Yeah. And listen, it takes effort to manually place every single tree, right? It takes effort to write all of the dialogue. It takes effort to get the people who are like the voice actors have a massive amount of effort to maintain character across thousands and thousands of lines of dialogue. It's just that the end result is not reflected. The work is not necessarily high quality, even if it does take time. The work doesn't, like, just spending time on something doesn't guarantee it'll be good. And this is something that has been a sticking point in my commentary for, obviously custom campaigns, especially, where I talk about how, obviously it took effort for this sort of stuff to happen. It takes effort for like BioShock Infinite, which I played recently. It takes effort to make all of the props and then make sure that the textures are aligned and then do all of the technical side of things and then actually put them into the map. But if if you're lazy at some point in that process, it shows because the lighting is fucked up. If you're lazy about the writing, it shows because the writing has a lot of plot holes and it's just completely incomprehensible or nonsensical. If you're lazy with your gameplay design or whatever, if you just have the wrong ideas and you're trying to execute on something that is a dead end conceptually, that will show. And it doesn't really matter how much work it took, how much money it took. What matters is whether or not it ended up being good. That's what matters to me. So when I see GTA 5 and I find insane amounts of financial success, unfortunately, that comes with it a lot of people who are really big fans of the game, really big fans of the genre or the franchise, or the developers even. And it feels like those people are unfortunately not really worth engaging with because of the fact that they have... they'll point to the fact that the game had a lot of sales. They'll point to the fact that the game has a lot of active players. They'll point to the fact that the game is a top 5 game on Twitch or whatever the case may be. They'll point to things that aren't related to its quality to talk about why it's good.
Unfortunately, you will always get apologists and
exactly.
Defenders. That's at least I don't think Rockstar has the biggest ones. I think even Blizzard has more of them, to be honest.
Yeah, that is true. People seem to. It is something that I've seen about Rockstar. With it's sort of like I'm trying to come up with a way to frame it. It's like people. There's an air of quality or competence around the developers of GTA 5 that is not earned by the product that they've produced. And that's passed on to Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. It's passed on to the products that they then go on to do. It's very similar to Blizzard in terms of people remember games that they thought fondly of. Like, people are nostalgic for Warcraft 3, even though it doesn't make any sense to be. People are nostalgic for StarCraft or StarCraft 2 or whatever. And so the more these games produce, like, it's a stacking effect where you almost can't be wrong. You almost can't be bad if the public consensus is, we're so excited for this product. And now they're cashing in on that. We'll have a separate episode about remasters at some point soon, I think. But they're kind of cashing in on that with the Diablo 2 remaster that was announced recently. And I don't know whether Rockstar will bother going down a similar trajectory, but I do think there's a similar thing happening, or has happened anyway historically, with the fans, with the apologists, so to speak, with the people who have bought in to the mental side of things, with the people who have decided that they are fans of the whole idea of the development firm and get excited when they announce a new game or whatever. Those people have unfortunately bought in at the wrong angle. They've decided that the game is good without really qualitatively analyzing it. And, to some extent, I sympathize with that. I understand it. It's hard to consider, I guess. It's hard to actually qualitatively analyze something if you don't have a frame of reference. And this is something that maybe would be interesting to talk about in the remasters episode as well, is a lot of people growing up with video games now have never played a good game, so they don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it is. They don't know what they're missing. They might have an innate sense that they can't really, some sort of intuition that this is bad, or this is not as good as it could be, or something is missing from this equation. But if you never played Brood War, and I'm not talking about the single player, obviously, if you've never really sat down and analyzed that, if you've never played like a really good old school classic shooter, if you've never consumed, it would be like only growing up watching really bad movies or something, and like if you grew up watching Transformers or whatever, and that's it. Well, you don't have a frame of reference for what a proper movie is, for what proper structure is, for what proper writing is. You've got no real like proper understanding of a frame of reference to compare it to. So that's
especially true though for the microtransactions as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't have a frame of reference for a game that's adequately monetized, that's properly monetized, which is just an upfront cost, by the way. Like, that's something that I'm going to be trying to do when I release my games, is you pay once and you've bought all current and future content. Like, there's no expansion packs, there's no DLC, there's no cosmetic microtransactions, there's nothing. You get everything when you buy the game once. And I think that will engender a pretty decent amount of good PR, so to speak. Word of mouth will spread, and especially when we release like a content update, I think that problem takes care of itself, man. I think you walk in and you say you've played this game for like a year, and a massive content update comes in. It adds like a new race, it adds a new campaign, whatever, adds some co-op content, adds some new features, whatever the case may be, whatever it adds. And suddenly you're like, fuck yeah, let me talk to my friends who they're interested, but maybe they didn't have a good reason to now. Well, check this, just got more content, buy the game and let's play it. Like, I think you get the sales you need. I think if you are smart with your budget and smart with your product development, you can produce content very quickly, and that content being free for anybody who's already bought the game is like a massive hit to like a positive spin on your word of mouth expression, so to speak, right? And I think it does take care of itself, especially in the modern world where everything is saddled with microtransactions and saddled with all this other shit. People are tired of it, even if they don't seem to actually reflect that in their purchasing decisions. They will be relieved to know that they don't need to break out their fucking wallet to pay for more than what they've already paid for when they buy the game in the first place.
Yeah. Well, some people, yeah, definitely. Others are unfortunately beyond redemption, but you get that probably with everything, I guess.
Yeah. And I've thought about that too, is like, if there's a situation where maybe we are feeling a little light on cash flow or something, there's the potential that we open up like a donations page or whatever, but I don't think that's necessary. I think I do really believe, and maybe I'll find out that I'm naive and this is the wrong idea. I do genuinely believe you don't need microtransactions. You don't need content updates that are paid for, that are premium or whatever, that like expansion packs or DLC or whatever. You don't need any of that shit. You just need an appropriately priced, like $20 for the game or whatever. You need an appropriately priced game, and you need regular content. And you need a really good core base, and you need to be able to have some open source element where the community can produce the content of their own, and deliver a quality example with your initial content, and let the community take care of the rest while you work on whatever content you want to work on, especially
more or less
for us.
What happened with the Doom community, for example.
Exactly,
where, like the original game set the standard, and then people just started doing their own stuff, and that's where the game got most of its popularity from.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, like, I'm not sitting here trying. Like, I don't need to be a game designer. I don't need to be an engine architect. I don't need to do. Like, what I want to do is make content. I want to make single player content. I want to make cooperative content. I want to make player versus player content. That's what I want to do. I want to make like just an unfettered, like unrestricted RTS content. That's really what I'm passionate about. So the fact that I have to make my own engine with the help of other people, and that I have to code my own game with the help of other people, is kind of ridiculous, because there's literally nothing else to use. But once that's done, I get to actually sit down and say, fuck yeah, it's time to produce some campaigns. It's time to make some content of whatever else, you know? So yeah, for me, that's like the real draw. And again, I think when you don't require it, maybe it's a position of privilege in that sense. Like, you don't need the money, so of course you wouldn't put microtransactions in. But it seems like people just put it in for the fuck of it. I really don't think any of these developers like Rockstar need to put microtransactions, especially in a game that sold 140 million copies. I think they're paid for. I think they've got everything that they need there.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, you don't need anything.
What you were saying before, you said that from the perspective of an independent developer. So imagine being Take-Two with $5 billion every day or whatever, and having to still up the microtransaction and even more and even more. Like, that's just sadistic at that point, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And maybe that's a nice little teaser for when we get into the remaster discussion for the next episode. So we could probably leave it at that. Did you have any final thoughts on the conversation we've had so far?
Oh yeah, I agree with pretty much everything. Unfortunately, like I said, not everyone is gonna be like, some people unfortunately are accepting of the new trends. Like, they think microtransactions are fine. Like, some of them actually enjoy it, because they say, oh well, otherwise if I already have everything from the start of the game, then what am I building towards? Whereas they don't understand that the point is to have fun with the fucking game, not to build your fucking stack of microtransactions on your library. But we pretty much covered most of our experiences with GTA 5. As I said, the game, like, I probably could talk a little bit about how some of the aspects of the game are a little bit worse than the previous games. And I think one thing I forgot to mention, actually, is that in a single-player game, most of the missions don't actually give you any payouts at all. Like, I think apart from the heists, only a few missions give you any money. You mentioned the Lester assassination missions. Those actually give you money, but other than those, and I think the ice, I think most of the missions don't even give you any money whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that is true.
They feel even more pointless for that reason. Whereas at least in GTA 3 and GTA Vice City, all of them gave you money pretty much, so it felt a little bit more rewarding to actually do missions, because then you can just fuck around in the free world game some more. Another example of how the free world aspect and the mission-oriented aspect just don't really go together well at all in this game. Unfortunately, that's really a running theme of this game, a continuing problem that just never goes away, regardless of whether you're playing the single player or the online mode, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point to close on. Yeah, it's to bring us back to that analogy that you gave, where the shoe, one shoe doesn't match the other shoe, and neither shoe fits the feet that are trying to wear it, right? So it kind of brings us back to there. And I guess as a parting shot, we can say probably play some of the older GTA games, play maybe Saints Row 2. If that's the kind of experience you're looking for, maybe check those games out instead of GTA 5. Because clearly you're not going to get what you really want out of this.
Maybe one day we'll see a game in this genre that's actually better than any of these, but as far as I'm aware, that day has yet to come. So
yeah, basically I have to make every game that I want to play, unfortunately. So this doesn't seem like there's any out there. So we'll see. Maybe in 10 years I can work on an open world RPG or FPS or whatever engine. So We'll see what happens. But yeah, that was it. That was the episode. Thanks again, Dynamo, for sitting down and talk with me. And I'm sure we'll do these a little bit more regularly now that I have a little bit more time. So
sure, would be my pleasure.
All right. See you boys in the next episode where we'll talk shit about Blizzard for shocking behavior. We've never done that before.
Yeah. See you soon.